Hi, I'm Mike Selinker. That's Chad Brown. That's Skylar Woodies. We're from Lone Shark Games, and we are here at Gen Con Online, and Gen Con Online is awesome. Apparently it started like in England hours ago, so we're kind of late to the day here at 10 a.m. on a Thursday, but we're excited to be here for our first panel, which is called the World of Apocrypha. Now, Apocrypha, for those of you who don't know it, is our big world-spanning game that takes place on the day you're playing it, and it's got all the historical, all the artistic, all the political, all the everything stuff in it that you can possibly want. And we're going to talk about all of that and how we got there and how it happened and what the offshoots were and the Pathfinder adventure card game and everything else that is associated with this game. So yeah, thank you for coming and listening to a bunch of tired people jabber, because it's gonna be super fun.
Gen Con, everybody.
It's Gen Con.
Yeah, it's Gen Con.
I will point out that I am not hungover from the Deanna Jones awards party, so that's a positive.
I mean, Torbeck invited me. I don't know why you didn't get your invite.
Oh well. We're gonna talk about.
You're supposed to open your first bottle at 9:30 and your second bottle at 10. I don't know.
All I know is that by this time, Gen Con, I would be rolling out of bed going, oh man, where does Shane need me to be right now? And thankfully he would have prepared a schedule for me that would tell me that I need to be here on the internet. That's what she did. So that was nice.
All right.
Okay. Let's talk about Apocrypha. Should we start at the beginning, the very beginning?
Sure.
Okay. So, we Lone Shark Games had been around for about, I don't know, like 8 years at this point, and we made bunches of cool games and puzzles and all that stuff. And I got a call to go up to Marysville, Washington, to meet with a guy named Ryan Sand, who had an idea that he was playing around with, which actually overlapped with an idea I was playing around with, which was for a card-driven RPG, because we both had gotten to the point in our lives where we just didn't have time to play RPGs with people like we wanted to, so I devoted the next 7 years of my life to fixing that problem. This is what you call a poor distribution of resources. But anyway, it was still a good idea. And so we talked about this idea, which was very sketchy, and sort of came up with a core mechanic. Our friend Matt Forbeck, who we love, came up with sort of a story Bible for a world that that was sort of being kicked around at the time. And we were like, we can put this together and make something cool. So I called Chad. I don't know. Chad, do you remember what it was like what the first call this was about?
I remember exactly. It was basically you had an idea for a game thing and you wanted to see if it could actually be made into a game and if we could make it work.
Yeah. I mean, basically we moved into your to the room next to the one you're in right now, basically, right above the one you're in right now, and just started playing around with this idea that I had about how it could function. And at the time, we didn't really have a lot to work with, so we were just like, okay, modern day horror. There's going to be vampires. There's going to be werewolves. There's going to be, I don't know, maybe we even considered aliens at that point. I have no idea. And, we developed a card set that functioned. I don't know.
I mean, we certainly played it a lot, so.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it sort of worked, right? And it worked enough that I wanted to get a few pieces of art and take it with me to the Gamma Trade Show and see if I could sell it to some people. And the first meeting that I had was the one I was hoping that would happen, would go best, which was with the fine folks at Paizo. And Paizo publishes the Pathfinder role-playing game. And I said to Jeff Alvarez and Eric Mona, now you guys are smart. I got a game system here, and it has to be about something. So it's about a horror universe kind of thing. But you're smart people. You just imagine the Pathfinder world on top of this. And then we played the game, and they said, we're making this game. Like right there. They said, we got to talk about it, but this is a thing we're doing together. And we made, so we sort of shelved that, and we put all of our effort into making the Pathfinder adventure card game, which, and it was never heard of again. No, it was, what would you say our initial results of the Pathfinder adventure card game were, Chad?
That was awesome.
Yeah.
It was launched I can't even remember when now. Gen Con
2013.
I was going to say 7 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, 2013. And the line was around the block. And I don't mean that, like, oh boy, that's a thing people say. No, literally the line was around the block, inside the convention center. And so it went really well. And we're like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And we put out, over the time, we're still making it. We've now made, I don't know, well over 100 products for that.
Yeah.
Quite a lot. Chad and I especially have, I think we've been involved in all of them. I mean, I've been bunches of people on various ones, but I think you and I are the only through line too.
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, it's been crazy. I've been, like many people, cleaning out my game room in the downtime, and some of the stuff I found is crazy. I found old playtest sets and prototype sets and organized play and old versions of characters. And
yeah, we have some 250 characters for that game. So anyway, we kept doing that, and then we didn't lose track of what we had started with. We thought, let's not just make the Pathfinder adventure card game. We've got some success here. We've got some financial, ability to do some development here. Let's go back and really rethink the ideas that we had for what. Actually, I should say we weren't calling it Apocrypha then. We were calling it Saints, right? Are you going to get prototypes?
It's a surprise.
No, you're doing. I didn't know this was a walking tour panel.
If we had planned this a little better, I would have realized that I had these. But since you started talking,
yeah,
I'm using my laptop camera, so this is probably going to be terrible. But you can see here. I'll turn this sideways.
What is Shane? What's the problem?
That's fine.
I'm trying to get Shane's attention.
Yeah. I'm going to bring one out here. But keep talking.
So I'm curious how much of that was missed. Okay, good. All right. So sorry, our man Shane is on the turntables on the 1 and the 2, and so there will be occasional points where I go speaking to the voice of God, and you hear nothing in return. And so, so if I start speaking in tongues, that's what this is about. Also, it's very common in an Apocrypha panel. So, okay.
I mean,
so
everybody who comes to Gen Con should get a chance to talk to Shane.
It's true. So, would also not be awake at this hour. So, okay.
I have no idea if this will be clear.
Look at that. Okay,
yeah.
So that's Saints. That's me using an ambigram font. You can flip it over. It still says Saints. Or if you prefer, Snius. Or whatever.
Mike, you should let Chad. You should let Chad talk for a second, and then his photo will switch to the big screen.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I should try it. Like I said, I did not set this up because clear failure of planning. So I don't know if the lighting's going to be good enough. I'll try this a little bit later here. You can see this was one of our early prototype boxes, and in it are high-quality original campaign management.
Oh wow, I forgot we had CD sleeves.
Yep. In here you can see one of the earliest missions ever, Bark at the Moon. There's no way you're going to be able to read that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had CD sleeves, and the idea was that you would check off, it would contain all the stuff for an individual mission.
Yep, here's a character.
Or an individual character.
Their stickers and their cards.
We had stickers, too. Yep, we had, oh man, I forgot all about that. So
Time to re-implement stickers.
Yeah, stickers. It's a brand new.
We're bringing stickers back.
It's a brand new technology we're introducing to gaming. It's called the Apocrypha, the Legacy Edition.
Sure.
And well, I mean, we didn't have legacy games at this point. We just thought it was pretty cool that we could use stickers for the first time, right? So anyway, we didn't do that. So yes, so that's Saints, and so we get Pathfinder up. And we're just like, oh gosh, we should go back and do this other game, but I don't want to call it Saints. I want to call it Apocrypha, and everybody looks at me like, that's not a word anybody knows. And I'm like, that's okay, I can live with that. And so I go off to, I don't know why you guys let this happen, but I go off to, so you go to the Joko cruise. Right, Chad goes to the Joko cruise, right? And I'm like, I need a space, right? So I need a space. So my friend Keith Baker, who will come up again in this call, like this is funny. It's gonna be like Old Home Week. People, I'm leaving breadcrumbs that will be picked up later. So Keith Baker and his wife Jen Ellis go on the Joko cruise with Chad. Right, and they're off having gallivanting in the hot sun, and I say to Keith, hey Keith, what if, I'm just curious, do you need anybody to be to pet sit your dog? And he was like, yeah, what are you talking about? I said, I just want to come to your house. And he was like, this is creepy. And I said, I need a space to get away, and you have a basement that I could like. And he live, by the way, I live in Seattle. He lives in Portland. Like this is like not a trivial thing. He was like, that's amazing. Yes, I want that very much. So my wife throws me and the dog in the car and kicks us out in Portland, and we move into Keith's basement for a little over a week. And I do two things for Doc. I do basically three things. The first is I talk to no one, which is dangerous. I mean, it's like I basically just sort of put myself in a bubble. I literally went out to get food, right? But I talked to no humans. I kept my phone calls to a minimum. And then second thing I did is I read all his comic books. So I read his Doom Patrol and Lock and Key and Necronomicon and all the other comic books that he had, right, that might be like, influential on what it is I was trying to do, because I'm smart, because I knew he had all of them. And the third thing I did is I wrote up what would become the basis of Apocrypha, with all the dreams and memories and factions and all that. And when I was done, my wife came and got me and the dog again, and we drove back to Seattle. And the next day I was in the office and I said, just let me talk for a while. And everybody did. Like everybody was like, and I just drew on the board and wrote down everything I'd come up with and so forth. And then I believe it was you, Chad, although I'm not sure. I believe it was you who said, are you done? Literally the first words after I stopped talking were I believe Chad just saying, are you done? And I was like, yeah. He said, fine, here's what's wrong with all that. And starts going through it, starts marking up the wall. And so and everybody grabs a pen and they start tearing it up.
To be clear, it wasn't that the idea was bad.
No.
Well, it's a good idea. We like the idea. This is not like, oh, we can't do it. This is like, here's, there's a few things that are wrong with it. We just got to fix those things.
Right. So, and then we dove into it, and we made it, and it became quite the project. In addition to Apocrypha, we now had to think about an Apocrypha crowdfunding campaign, So we went on Kickstarter and we asked people if they would let us write this giant game, and they gave us, I don't remember, $325,000, I think, to do it, which was super nice. And we then got a little more art. There are 666 pieces of art in the game. It was a totally randomly chosen number. Just happened that way. And then we realized what we had done, which is we had created this giant amount of card text and art, and we said, oh God, somebody has to put all this together.
All right, can I interrupt for a second here?
No, sure.
Because there's a tiny bit of story, not that I'm disagreeing, but there's a thing that Mike hasn't mentioned. When we were making the Pathfinder Adventure card game, like, we had a prototype for Saints, and I was taking it around to shows and took it to a Gen Con and took it to a Winter Fantasy and playing with friends and whatnot. And that was like a few hundred cards, which are all like white cardstock you saw before. We're making it work, it's fine. But we knew part of the advantage of going to Pathfinder was that they had these adventures already written and tested and developed and played and just beat to hell and really refined, and art was done for them. It was all great. But the sort of structure of a Pathfinder story is that you start off, coming out of the forest or the farms, or, you're a new recruit or something like that. And eventually you're going to be like astride the world, saving the planet, whatever it is you're doing. For Apocrypha, rather than building up slowly, we're like, okay, that was great for that game, but for this game, we're just going to do it all at once.
Yeah,
the idea of, okay, well, rather than, hey, we're going to have like 100, 150 cards, it's going to tell like a fifth of the story, a sixth of the story. No, we're going to do it all at once. It turned out to be a bit of an epic undertaking. So go ahead, Rick.
There were 1,500 cards that we were making, which was insane. The crowdfunding campaign was supposed to say, it was supposed to be like, okay, tell us how much of this game you want us to make. And everybody said all of it. And we were just went, oh, okay. And so suddenly we had text and art for, 1,500 cards, and Liz Spain and Gabby Weidling and Chad and me and Paul Peterson and Tanis O'Connor all sort of looked at each other and went, I'm not doing it. And so Liz says, I know, we need to send up the bat signal. And the next thing I know, I'm introduced to a gentleman named Skylar Woodies.
That's me.
That is you.
You said, like, this is part of the story where I was chained to a table and in design.
Do you remember at all what it was like when you came into the office and we pitched you what we wanted to do?
It's so in my 10 years in the board game industry, I had not heard anything as wild of as an undertaking as what you were describing to me. It was intimidating, and it was a kind of overwhelming. And walking into the Loan Shark office for the first time was kind of like walking into like a mad scientist lab. Like, there's just piles of prototypes, there's piles of games, and there's shelves that are filled with shark models and toys, and there's like it was quite an experience. But I can say that it definitely turned out really well after a lot of work.
Well, I mean, so basically what you had, right? So we left two other people out intentionally because I wanted to describe their contributions. Mike Valancourt and Elisa Teague, who had first just me and Mike.
Who had accidentally signed up for the death job.
Yeah, exactly. So first it was just me and Mike trying to do the art direction for this game, which Mike was super enthusiastic about at first, and then realized, oh my God, how much work I was putting out, right? And he was like, I want all of this, but I can't. I don't know how, right? But he was getting some crazy cool art done. Notably, the character Dr Zeez, who is this plague mask wearing doctor, who is like, that's going to be one of our player characters, and he's going to walk around he's going to walk around normal civilization like that. And we're like, okay, sounds good, do it. And then Elisa came in and sort of took the role on and made just a billion pieces of art. We had 75 artists on the game. They were basically told, so when we do just to give a different example, like years ago, I was the creative director for the Harry Potter trading card game, right? So when we do art descriptions, it would be like, this character, he looks like this, he's this tall, he, all the, just like the, and here we would write art descriptions, but we wouldn't necessarily know what was gonna come, right? So me and Liz and Lisa would just sort of say, this is kind of what we're going for, but let's surprise us. And we also put in, into the art, I'm gonna say, I think this is not a wrong word, thousands of Easter eggs. That there are in the art and story there are thousands of references to things that you just have to sort of pick up as you're going along and go, wait a minute, is that what this is? And puzzle elements and hints and just everything, right? And so the artists were getting requests from us where we would just they would go, are you sure this is what you want? And we go, I think so, yeah. And they would come back and we would just get every day in my inbox, it would be like the craziest thing. We'd do a thing, it's just like, I want a swarm of axolotls coming out of Lake Arecibo. And they're like, you mean specifically Lake Arecibo? Yes, specifically axolotls. They're very small. Make them bigger. And it's just like, okay. And these conversations would just happen. And we would go, yep, we got it. And that's what I would get. So, but then Skylar comes in and he sees this mountain of things and has some direction from Elisa and Liz, but I don't know. Like, what do you see?
I'm so lucky that Elisa and Liz put together such a solid groundwork for me to start from all of the layout that I took on, and without their direction, I'd be pretty much listless, just floating off into the ocean that is 666 pieces of art and 1,500 cards to be laid out.
And characters and rule books. And
yeah. I think that...
by the way, Liz and Lisa also did tons of, too, right?
Oh, they did tons of it as well. They did absolutely. Go ahead, John.
One thing I will interject for those of you who are hearing 1,500 cards, it's 1,500 unique cards.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
That's true. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, but we don't have any room.
Up the challenge factor by 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like every card there would be a debate. No, you got to be very careful of that corner of that art because that says this thing. Oh, by the way, none of the boxes that you're fitting the art in are square.
pushing art and that, or pushing a card and then you being like, oh, we got to move that back, we got to move that around. And the triplicate cards was probably one of the most challenging things of getting 3 images to align on 3 cards when you laid them together. And it reminded me of the big free monster from Magic the Gathering, and that's that was one of the really cool things that we got to do in layout, of trying to get those cards to work in triplicate together so they made one scene.
There are cards that go on top of other cards. It's just all sorts crazy. But basically we got it done. We got it out, and we should start getting into it and talk about how the game's played and also what it looks like. So at its heart, Apocrypha is both an RPG and a card game. You can play in either mode. You can play against the game, or one person can say, "I'm going to be the game," and take on a dungeon master like role called the guide, and they choose the opponents, but the game runs itself. And so the guide is freed up to just improvise and steer the story the direction they want it to go, but they don't have to do any of the work. They don't have to mapping and just everything else that one does in an RPG. The game will run itself. And so what the cool thing about that is you can write whatever story you want. You can put it together out of the pieces that we've made for you. Another sort of element of the game is that it takes place in real time. And so, or on the day you're playing it. So we have an app called the Apocrypha X1 companion app that gives you adjustments to your game based on what day you're playing it. So, in any given moment, you might see an effect that is based on today's politics or weather or any number of other aspects, right? So the individual mission will tell you new things to do. The characters will do different things. Today's temporal mutation, I don't know, you're never going to be able to see this, but maybe you will. So here's the X1, here's the companion app, and it says that today's temporal mutation is Gen Con Online. Move to the Nexus convention, flip it to Hope. That means nothing to you if you don't know how to play the game, but there are places called Nexuses, and they have Hope and Doom sides, and whatever. It's not important. You'll like it if that sounded cool to you. Okay, so
we got examples on the screen now if you want to talk about them.
We got what on the screen? Oh, you know what? I can't see the screen. I should probably know what's on the screen to do this. Why don't you talk about it? You should talk about it.
So we have some art put up here, basically just to give us something to talk about. So you could see a Nexus festival. Festival gives you an example of some sorts of the Easter eggs that might be hidden there. And so I will let other people talk about that as much or as little as they want. But the terminal is an excellent example of what Mike's talking about here. It is a Nexus with both Hope and Doom sides here. So you can see what sort of the locations of critical importance, the places of power, etc., look like in the world. We have these two here so you can kind of compare and contrast and see what's going on. They tell a little story as you flip through. That was it.
Yeah, I just realized I need to learn how to see the screen that you are referring to because I don't know how to do that. So Shane, hook me up. But yes,
Sure, I mean, I can talk about this a little bit if you want.
Please do, yeah.
Sure. Or Skylar, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure, I can talk a little bit about it. So, I mean, we mentioned Dr. Zeez earlier. The character, the distribution of the character traits along the outside of the edges of the cards I think it's one of the coolest parts about the characters as well, denoting the directions that you can use those stats. I think visually, I don't know, I really love how this game came out. It kind of it's been a while since I've sat down and looked at it, so getting prepared for this panel has been a lot of fun of re-exploring all the stuff that we did.
Go ahead and talk about what a character, if you're looking at a character.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. So the characters, their basic art, who they are, is all listed at the top left corner, of course. But you've got 4 traits, and each character has a unique distribution of those traits and numbers and where they're placed on their card. So if we look at Zeez on the top center, we see that he has a mind of 4. That means he gets 4 dice for when accepting mind challenges. But it also means that if somebody is at the same location as him, he can assist them in mind. And that works the same for body and spirit, or soul. Body and soul. How can I get that wrong? And then rage is what he's best at helping himself with. But that actually refers to people physically sitting at the table with you. So you can help somebody physically sitting to your right with body, and you can help physically somebody sitting to your left with soul, which I think has always been a really cool thing.
Also, those numbers, body, soul, mind, and rage, in there also indicates the number of cards you have in your deck of that type. And so a character like Dr. Zeez here has lots of mind cards, not a lot of body cards. That's okay. He's got other people's bodies to work with, right? He doesn't have to worry about his own, because he's an unlicensed necrosurgeon. The question I always get about Dr. Zeez, of course, is, where do you get a license for necrosurgery? and I was like, if you have to ask, like then you're the victim. So but yeah, I can. So we have like so your characters will be given to you, or you choose to make them however you like. And then you can take them, you go on missions, and the missions tell you where you might go. So if you look at the Nexus Festival, for example, you can see that we have the band there, President Amy is playing. That is a reference to the demons of Christian mythology and the president of hell, Amy, which I sort of got as a true thing. But I thought it was a cool name for a band. So I want to see President Amy.
I'm going to interject. I tossed this in here because I knew Mike would be able to tell this story. One of the things I tell people about Apocrypha, this is sort of my starting pitch, because most people don't know what the word Apocrypha means. And it's basically this. All of the crazy stories that you've heard, and the myths and the legends and the fables and the things you tell kids and the things you hear that people told kids way back when, that we all know are made up. Well, in the world of Apocrypha, they're kind of made up. They're all based on reality. You just don't quite know the truth because the people behind them don't really want you to know exactly what's right.
That's right. One of the things that's true about this game is when we wrote it, we thought it was a nice, fanciful thing to do a dystopian world where none of the, where people behind the scenes, monsters behind the scenes controlled everything and stuff like that. And every now and then, people these days go, "How did you get everything right?" And we're like, "No, it's all a joke, man. It's all just us riffing. It's not like we're predicting anything." Well, anyway, it turned out. So let's go to the terminal, just so you can see the difference between the two cards there. The terminal shows that, you can see that a card's art changes a little bit from the hope side to the doom side. You can see there's, on the hope side, there is a gentleman with a briefcase, and on the doom side, there's a briefcase left at a train station, which those are very different, levels of ominousness, right? And so it is 1 minute later, right? So and you can see they have different powers. The numbers along the bottom indicate how many cards of that type are in each deck. So we have mind, body, soul, and rage, plus threats and omens, which are powerful cards that influence how the game goes. So let's talk about what gifts look like. This is all from the Candle Point set, which is sort of how do I describe it? Sort of a tour, a smorgasbord of the other sets in the game. There's something from every set in this one. It's kind of like a sampler. And so we wrote this with Patrick Rothfuss, who, if you don't know, he's the author who did The Name of the Wind. And Patrick Rothfuss lives in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And I said to him, my team and I want to make a place called Candle Point, and we want to base it on Stevens Point. Will you help me wreck Stevens Point? And he was like, yes, I will absolutely. That's the best assignment I've ever had. And so we went through his hometown and we kind of wrote it. And so we fictionalized a little bit, but it still has the ice cream shop in the dead center of town and all that stuff. So let's anyway, Patrick Rothfuss did a great job on this. The authors will introduce them as we go along. Let's take a look at some gifts. Let's look at Gallo glasses. So you can see that Gallo Glasses here is a mind gift. It helps you out when you're making mind checks, and it has some powers on it. It has some traits along the bottom, and it has some checks that you need to make to get it. And so, you'll see that so a Gallaglass is an old Scottish soldier, I think, maybe. I can't remember. But also we make the pun of him having gallows in his glasses, right? That he sees executions. And then another one after that is Mr. Bear. This is based on a Double Click song. And so you'll see the Double Clicks performing tomorrow, by the way, at Gen Con Online. You should watch them. They're great.
We should also remind everyone to log into their Gen Con tickets and submit submit to the panel and log in with their tickets, or tickets to their panel and submit to their logins, something like that. Make sure their tickets.
Yeah.
Make sure your Gen Con ticket is working.
Do the Gen Con thing.
Do the Gen Con thing.
What that means. I mean,
there's no line. There's no wait list.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong. Click
you don't
the
have
button.
to pay for it. You don't have to pay for it.
Show that you went to Gen Con.
One thing I was going to say is if you really want, it is acceptable to go find a bad pizza place and stand outside it for 20 minutes and then get a slice of bad pizza just to recreate the experience. But it's not required. It's just acceptable.
I have, we're supposed to be wearing our Gen Con badges at all times. I have like 40 years of Gen Con badges in the other room. I could.
Say, do I have one here? I might. Try to find one.
So you can see Mr. Bear here. We actually got the Double Clicks to let us use the music for this song, and our promo video. When no one knew what Apocrypha was, we put out a promo video for it with the lullaby for Mr. Bear in the background. It's still up. It's the creepiest thing you'll ever see, and everybody go, whatever that is, whatever Selenker and friends are dreaming up, I want to hide from it because it's scary, but also I want it, and so that's why we had such a great launch, right? So we got more gifts here. Here's Demon Key, which has a little pun that it is also D-Monkey. So there's a monkey in the background there. So this is a soul gift, and you can see it's got lots of stuff going on there. There's flavor text on every card. Obviously, we spent a lot of time trying to get the flavor text exactly right. Some of the stuff in the flavor text is fairly simple, and some of the stuff is like, what are you guys smoking? And so the idea that skeleton keys are designed to get you skeletons is probably not what you want them to be. But my favorite gift in the base set in Candlepoint is Therapy Dog. So we have a playtester named David who had a dog named Tavis. And he said, "Can I have my dog in your game?" That sentence always works. By the way, that sentence more like, "Can I be in your game?" I can't guarantee is going to work. But can my dog be in your game? Sure, we'll find a way, right? And so this is Tavis. He was a therapy dog. And we just wanted to memorialize him in the game. And he's adorable, and he has a little blue collar, and we're happy about that. So we have a heart. We have.
It proves it right there.
Let's talk about threats. Chad, you want to talk about how threats work?
Sure. So when you're going through a mission, you're going to find various things. You'll find some threats and some gifts. If you find a gift, you'll make those checks Mike was talking about. Those are on that middle line. I'll tell you what you need to do in order to put it in your hand. You get to keep it for as long as you want. In between games, as a group, you make a new deck based on those character numbers, so you get to refine your deck over time. And once you have the gifts, they're yours to keep. The threats, on the other hand, are there to stop you, to mess you up, to ruin your day. They similarly have checks that you need to make, but they also have powers to mess with your lives. when you overcome a threat, it gets out of your way and you can keep making progress. But if not, it's going to beat you up. It's going to hurt you, which is going to take cards out of your deck. So your deck acts as sort of your hit points, your life. And also, it's going to go back in, so it's going to mess you up for the future. This particular threat, Paper People, I assume everyone's looking at Paper People, is a completely and friendly and normal picture that was actually taken at the wedding of two very good friends of ours.
Yep. In fact, we could probably say who this is, because I mean we're talking about Gen Con.
They're involved in making Gen Con happen.
Yeah. So this is Derek and Nelly's wedding. Derek Gooder and his wife Nelly Steiner, and they took us out to Leavenworth, Wisconsin, and had a wedding in which, I swear to God, they wore unicorn and cat masks made out of paper. This is an actual scene from their wedding. We were at this. And I was like, I took a picture and was like, you cannot expect me not to put this in Apocrypha. And they looked at me and they were like, 100%. You should put this in Apocrypha. And so this was a real thing that happened to us. And in front of that very creepy Blair Witch style totem in the background, and we're just like, yep, that's the game right there. That's the game. So
it is worth noting that basically none of this was staged.
Nope,
I mean, they knew what was going to happen, but they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to find this, destroyed background area in the forests of Washington, and yeah, it's awesome.
So that's a scary card, and if it you see it, it's something that you generally want to beat. The next card is Snow Angel. This is the back of a true threat. The most cards have a standard card back. This one has true threats are the ones that are sort of your villains of that particular game session. And this one, by an artist named Daria Rathskaya, who's just one of my favorite artists that we got to work on a project, is just a little girl. She's a snow angel. The stories of... What?
I said she's no angel.
No angel. She's no angel.
This is not mean for you.
That's right. Right. Yes, she's no angel. Yes, exactly. Sorry, I forgot about that pun. And this sort of Candle Point area, just to be clear, it's in Wisconsin, which is, I believe, for 11 months of the year covered in snow. And so we did some things with Christmas there is all about the Yule lads and the Yule cat, which is all sorts of crazy stuff, things that happen there. And this is a snow angel that is involved in the polar plunge. I can't remember what we call it in the game. It's got some other silly name. And the idea that in the middle of winter you just go jumping in the lake and nothing bad will happen. And something bad happens. Spoiler. Sorry, I didn't mean to spoil it for you. Okay, so. That's the sort of base environment, but and this is in the box called the world. But now let's talk about, we're just going to go through the various chapters. There are 9 main chapters, other than this sort of intro chapter and one that we'll get to in a bit. There's sort of 9 main chapters, and each of them is about a part of the country that Chad, you wouldn't happen to have pulled the map for this, would you?
I did not. Sorry.
That's cool. I will send that to Shane.
Yeah,
no worries. Anyway, I'm going to do that. So let's talk about Skinwalkers while I do that. Skinwalkers is near and dear to my heart. This is the chapter that I wrote the most of with my friend Matt Forbeck. In Skinwalkers, the concept is one of my favorite movies is called The Warriors. And The Warriors is a movie about it's a jaunt from one end of New York to the other. 9 friends go up to a park, and some number of them go home again. That's basically the story. But along the way, it turns out they're gang members, and they get accused of the murder of a gang chieftain, essentially, and it goes real bad. And so I wanted to do that same kind of story, but in Chicago. and all the gangs were lycanthropes who wore what they turned into on their backs, right? And so my thought was, okay, let's get like the all the different types of were creatures that we can think of. There's a were creature right there. Oh God, what was that, Chad? A terrifying were creature just showed up in your video there.
Sorry, I was trying to find the map you're looking for, and I was like, which card are we looking at? Oh no, you're just looking at my cat.
Yep. Hi, Remus. Okay, so let's show what Chicago under the were creatures looks like. This is Ruby Doomsday. This first card is Ruby Doomsday. She's a 13-year-old roller girl. She's one of my favorite characters, running from the cops. She's here in Seattle. We have a big roller derby community, so I wanted to make a roller derby character, and she's super fun to play. So she's got to deal with the fact that there's all these lycanthropes around, and so who better than a 13-year-old on roller skates to take care of it? So we got the Nexus Gangland here, and you can see that this is the moon is coming in, which means that these mohawked people are going to turn into were creatures soon. We got my as a gift here. We got my dog Guybrush, or a version of my dog Guybrush, who is designed to hunt out were creatures. So he's Rex Imperator. Our pets frequently show up in things. You would talk about our Gen Con video. If you go to our screen, our booth essentially in Gen Con, you can see a video.
Our square of the neural net.
In the looking glass, I think it's called. If you go to the Gen Con website, there'll be a place to look at the various sort of booth spaces. The looking glass card. You'll find the Lone Shark logo is a little bit up right off the center.
Yep.
Get a little more
to our booth.
And so you'll see our pets showing off some of our games in entertaining ways.
It is worth noting for those of you who haven't met Guybrush. This picture is basically taken from actual Guybrush. He does, at least at that point, he did have that mohawk and those goggles.
Yeah, you were.
The red.
Yeah, he wore aviator goggles. He was particularly great. So he hunts out werewolves for you, which is nice. And so you might need to prepare yourself for a fight. So you're gonna have some of the chickney brew, which is made out of a chick charney, which is a I believe Jamaican truth-telling bird, which is good to have. It heals you, if it wants to. But sometimes you can't just wait for chick charney to show up, so you cook it. You can see the guys. I don't know if you can, but the server's name is Rudy because this card is from the song "Rudy Can't Fail" by the Clash, and they talk about eating chicken brew for breakfast. But anyway, you might have to fight off some were creatures, so you get yourself your Yankee Clipper. There's a fantastic scene in the Warriors. This is a direct tribute to the Warriors, because there's a scene in that movie where the gang members meet the Baseball Furies, which are a terrifying looking band of Yankee pinstripe wearing gang members, and they chase them down, and it turns out they're punks, and these guys beat them to death with their own bats, which is super great. And of course, the most important thing is that we have bad guys. They're not always bad guys. This is weird. So this is a weird game in the sense that it's not always true that the person you're going up against is a bad guy. There's sort of a moral, I don't know, Chad, you want to talk about the moral ambivalence of this game?
So it's interesting. I was going to talk about it later, but yeah, that's a good point. So one of the things we wanted to do, since we're kind of creating a world more than telling a single story. Like we have these chapters. Mike mentioned that there were 9 chapters plus an introduction, plus there's an 11th hybrids chapter of things kind of mixing together. But the idea is we're trying to build out the world and let you tell the story in however you want. So you can play these missions, roughly speaking, in whatever order you like. We'll get onto that a little bit more later. But it's not all about you against the world. These are creatures, people, things, etc., out in the world. And so some of them you can make friends with, some of them you can make not friends, but alliances with. Some of them might start out unfriendly, but you can make them friendly. And that's getting somewhat back to the root of the game as creating a world, sort of a modern survival horror world in which there are definitely bad things, but it's not literally everything out to get you. But also a role-playing game. You know, if you play a role-playing game where everything you run into is something to beat up, those can be fun, but over time, those tend to be a little less interesting than the games where you can make friends, make allies, make enemies, that sort of thing.
So this is Blackhawk. He is a member of the Griffs. They turn into Griffins. That's bad for you usually, although they're not.
I remember when you first described to me that they were were-griffins, and I was like, I don't think you're allowed to make.
I'm not allowed to wear griffins. It's a human being that turns into an animal thing. Like I can't go to another monster type. Like it's not like I made him wear Frankenstein. Right? I mean,
supernatural things is definitely not a list of things that I was like, oh, that should be a D&D.
Fine. Well, I wanted there to be were-griffins.
Were-griffins are cool. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's just like a cooler owlbear, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. So this is Blackhawk. He's the leader of the were-griffins, the Griffs, and you can see the Blackhawks. Chicago Blackhawks are my favorite sports team. So he's got the 4 feathers in his head, and anyway, he's not a bad guy, but he's also your enemy. And so you got to figure out, all right, well, do I get this gang member on my side, or do I fight him, or and all that stuff. So lots of cool stuff in there. So that's the base set. That's the world. Let's talk about the next box, which is the flesh. Skylar, you want to walk us through the Deathless?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna wait for the screen to transition, but I know the stream is delayed, so it's probably there now.
Let's see. It's always there.
The Deathless is the. Wait, give me 1 second.
I got you. So the Deathless is the chapter that's about the north in Canada. There are all these oil fields.
Wait, no, I got it. I have the Deathless writer Liz Spain here to talk about Deathless for 5 minutes.
Excellent.
What? Is she coming on?
We thought we weren't going to be able to get Liz because.
Wait, no. This is you told us you had to work.
Yeah, and my meeting just finished, so I've got 5 minutes.
Great. Tell us about the Deathless.
All right, so the Deathless.
Oh wait, sorry. Tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Liz Spade. I did a bunch of stuff on Apocrypha.
Yeah,
a bunch.
True.
And I was lead design on Deathless. So Deathless is a portion taken from the Epic of Gilgamesh about a journey of a kind of a jerk of a hero character going into the underworld to confront Ereshkigal for being really upset that she wasn't invited to a party. Ereshkigal is the goddess of the underworld. And so in that classic story, there's like these gates that he has to go through to sacrifice things. So I stole that from historical literature and put it in the oil fields of northern Canada. And so they have drilled too deep into the oil wells, into the underworld. And Ereshkigal's like, oh, hey, opportunity to reclaim my kingdom on Earth. It's nice and cold here. We'll start here.
Hey Liz, you're a chemist, right?
Yes.
So Tell me about where oil comes from.
Oh, so oil, well, it's basically a bunch of dead dinosaur plants compressed over. So it's all of the long chain proteins and sugars in that get compressed over time. And yeah, so the corpses of all these dead plants and animals get sort of compressed and gooified over time when they get trapped in areas like bogs and things where there's no chance for that stuff to like kind of decay and get put back into the environment. So it just kind of gets trapped and layers and layers and layers and compressed over time until you get just this goo, this dead goo. So, of course, the underworld is full of this stuff, being the dead goo of animals and things. So when the oil drillers up north tap too deep, this is now suddenly, a necromancer's dream. Is they can animate this goo across the landscape and attack people as you need to, because, you need to build an army.
Yeah, might as well make it out of oil. So we have so some of the cards we have up. We have Bobak. There's a story about Bobak's name that I can't remember. Friend of yours?
Oh, sorry, I can't see the cards. So
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Oh,
The first picture is the back of Bobak's card.
Yeah.
Yes. So that his name comes from a friend of mine, Bobak Zakalezny, whose name I think is fantastic, and known as Zach.
Yep.
So
perfect. Thanks. So let's see. We got what are the cards up here? We got Gray Malkin, which is a cat that haunts cemeteries. And what else? What else do we have here? We have. Sorry, I'm trying to follow along with Shane. Chad, do you want to say which cards are up?
Yeah, so Gray Malkin is a gift, a friendly cat, and it shows a little bit of extra treatment around its frame. The next card we have up is Right Hand.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You want to talk about the frame treatment?
No, it just these are cards that, if you're a Magic Gathering player, these are graveyard cards. They come snapping back when you least expect them to. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's, mostly it's good. And sometimes.
So
anyway.
These are gifts. They're good things. They come back.
Yeah. I put this in so we could talk about each chapter has, in addition to a sort of different story feel, also some different mechanics unique to it. So you can kind of get a different flavor, different kind of play experience for each one. These cards, the blood spattered cards, I call them, you can see that second power draw when on top of your discard pile. That's a card that's going to come back, just as an example. The Right Hand, for those of you who can see it, give them a big thumbs up. I said it just because I like the art.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's just a joke of like, we're just like, hey, here's a hand of yours. Right?
Yeah. So I am not an artist. I'm not an art director, and I didn't do a lot of the flavor text. So there's things about this that I really appreciate. So I put in Right Hand, one, because it is literally just a severed hand giving a thumbs up, and two, flavor text. Give it a task, or it'll find one on its own. You know what they say about idle hands. That's just perfect.
As we all know, Thing got into a lot of mischief at the Addams Family house.
That's correct. Pocket Full of Roses has a quote from Hamlet on it. Ophelia goes mad. Spoiler. Sorry, I keep doing that. It's 400 years. I think you've probably seen it by now. And then what follows that?
Papagede.
Oh, who's Papagede? Tell us about Papagede.
Oh yeah, so Papagede is a Loa from Voodoo backgrounds and things. So there's a number of Loa who are like very important spirits in Voodoo, and there's a particular sort of class of Loa, a group of Loa that are responsible for death and the afterlife in the underworld, and Papagede is kind of the big character of that. And he's also a really interesting character because he is very much the joyful side of Steth. He's a nihilist. He drinks, he smokes, he parties, and so when somebody dies, you invite Papa Gede over for the party portion of the funeral and things. So he's kind of is very like a lot of the like bad guys and enemies, quote unquote, in the Deathless. He's not really evil, but he just has different motivations because he's on the side of the afterworld, death. Like, it's pretty great here, he thinks.
We also really like that, he's obviously African American, and this takes place in the whitest Canadian town you could possibly imagine, and his coming to visit is quite a surprise to the locals. There's a lot of sort of social dynamics we can play off of here. Also, he's so cool, we put him on the cover of the box.
Yeah. And I just really love this piece of art.
Yep, there he is.
That was the other thing I put in. One thing that we didn't quite make it in because we had to extract it in a weird way was a reference to the well. I was hoping we'd get someone to talk about the well a little bit.
No, the well, yeah. Do you want to talk about the well real quick?
Sure. So in the sort of the Epic of Gilgamesh that I took the segment of, there is like a last final gate. And in this case, I did a play on the concept of the Well of Souls and the oil well. So that is, the well itself is the last gate to Aresh Kakal's kingdom. So as you go through the adventure, what happens throughout the other scenarios, like, things will go into the well and things may come out of the well because they represent kind of what's happening in Aresh Kagal's throne room, if you will, and how she's amassing power and how you'll have to confront her at the end if you want to stop her from bringing her kingdom back to Earth. So the well is a unique mechanic to Deathless where things kind of collect up like in a well.
You don't know what's going to come out of the well. That's the thing about an oil field. You just don't know what's going to come out. The next chapter is Fey. Do you want to stick around, or you have to run?
I can stick around.
All right, let's then do it.
Just taking over Skylar's spot.
It's fine. No, we'll get Sky. We got Skylar later. We got plans for him. First card being shown here is one of my favorite characters, Juniper Flowers. Juniper's name is based on a semi-famous person named Juniper Flowers, but also just sort of, we wanted to get a trans character in here that we really liked, but also somebody who felt completely at home in the very strange environment of the Fey, which Liz will now describe because it may be the coolest thing we've ever created.
So the Fey chapter was based on the idea of, what if the fairies put on two of the largest festivals in the United States, very sort of Americana culture, one being a giant Coachella-style music festival, and another being the Sturgis motorcycle rally. So we've got, in the Dakotas, we have biker fairies, who are ruled by Maxa. There's 3 fairy goddesses. Maxa is the red-haired warrior, and she leads the fairy biker gangs into this area, whereas her little sister is kind of the candy kid raver who is invading / running this fairy-themed music festival. Is taking over the area.
And Bev is Bev is the storm goddess, right? Yes,
she's the storm goddess. She's like the harbinger. So there's a lot that with sort of her character and the art in this chapter that sort of ties into the big meta of the apocalypse coming, because Bev is very much the harbinger of the apocalypse character in literature.
They're gathering the army. The Fey is doing the wild hunt, which is a thing that the fairies do in Celtic mythology. But they're on motorcycles and horses that never touch the ground. And so they come into your town and they're like, let's do a festival, and everybody loves a festival. And so there's music and rides and everyone seems to get in the car and just come along, and suddenly there's 10,000 people moving across America, all not yet touching the ground and stuff like that. So cards we got to look at here. Paper Birds is the first one. Paper Birds is a song that I particularly like by a band called The Slip. And it shows there's a tradition of Japanese kids in Japan making paper cranes. You make like 10,000 of them. I don't know what is the reason you do that?
It's kind of an effort. It's traditionally done when someone is ill or something like that. Someone needs a big demonstration of support. Is you fold paper cranes and then like put them on these big hanging chains, so that you spend just put a lot of effort and will into wishing somebody the best.
So in this case, we figured there'd be a lot of paper cranes around if this was done a lot. So here the death head moths are attacking this farm, and the locals have set the paper cranes on them to try to stop them. So that's cool. Candy Butcher. Oh, the whole festival thing. So we spent a lot of time using. What'd you say?
Before you guys move ahead, one of the reasons I want to kick Paper Birds in here is as an example of its power.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So I'm going to read this in language here. So it's a mind gift. And when you or someone else where you are assembles, that's when you're putting your dice together to make your challenge attempt, toss your hand into the air. For each card that lands face down, that person may add 1 mind die, then pick up your cards and sacrifice this gift.
Right. So the thing I was going to go into is that this all takes place in kind of a carnival environment. So we came up with all the possible carnival games that we could do in a card role-playing game. And so here's the Candy Butcher on the Midnight Ballyhoo, which it sounds like a fun place to be, right? That doesn't sound dangerous. And so we can see a lot of the fairies kind of at work here, trying to entice people. I never know how to pronounce this card. Caitsh. How do you say this?
Catchy.
Catchy, right. So, it's about cat. If you look at the proportions of this, that's a dog. Like that's a house. That's like German Shepherd size. But sure. So we wanted to do those guts. But let's start with one of the bad guys. So this is a Knuckleavi. This is a myth of Orkney basis. That's up in the far northern portion of the British Isles, and it's a centaur, sorta, but with no skin, and does poison gas. And we're just like, why is this not like why doesn't everyone fear this? And so.
Yeah. The art is actually based on, I believe it's an 18th century French artist / doctor who he invented a preservation method that involved injecting paraffin into the blood vessels of a subject. And so he has a particularly famous piece, which is a horse and rider. They of course have no skin. Yeah, so this method he did kind of looks a lot like the bodies exhibits that we have today, where things have no skin because the method doesn't preserve the skin. So yeah, I was like, ooh, what if that was a monster?
What if that was a monster? And I was like, I have the myth for you. And then finally in this chapter, we have what was probably the first piece of art, or maybe the second piece of art commissioned for this game. It's called Tooth Fairy. The Tooth Fairy in our world, the teeth are the important part of the face, right? And so it's just visiting a nice kid to collect his teeth. You'll note that there's no indication that the teeth are outside the kid's head at this point, but whatever. If you look at... if you look in the background of this, the kid has a poster on his wall, which is also by the same artist. It's a piece of art named the artist named Shane Tyree, and he put his cover of our game, the Ninth World, a skill building game for Numenera, in the background of the card for Apocrypha, and we think that's super great. So yeah, the Fey Chapter is a mind bender. It's super fun. You don't stop laughing, but it's also real creepy too. And the Tooth Fairy is kind of that middle point between those two things, maybe a little further.
You get another sense of this chapter's kind of play style when you see its first power. So that's a threat power. So when you confront, basically as soon as you see the card come out, you have to smile. And if you don't smile, it'll take away one of the dice that you roll. In fact, one of the highest dice. It might not matter at all, but it might also be the difference between success and failure.
Yep. So, our fairies are nice.
And then the other thing is, if you win, hey, you get a new present. The Tooth Fairy brought you a gift.
Yep.
That sounds exactly like the Tooth Fairy.
It is exactly like
Just keep smiling. Just keep smiling.
Okay, so that's it for the Fey Chapter. We're going to go into Golems. I don't want to keep you, Liz, if you need to run. Or if you want to give us a...
Thanks.
But it was great having you. Goodbye.
Good to see you, Liz.
That was a treat.
Yeah, I thought it was. I only imagined for a moment. You're like, hey, describe this chapter that a person standing 10 feet away from you wrote and knows entirely.
Can you imagine her saying, "No, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it."
She does that in every other aspect of my life. So
I can imagine that because I've been there.
All right, Chad, you're up. We're gonna burn through these chapters pretty quick because we're. Well, unless I don't know if we have to stop at noon, but we
should just go a little faster.
So tell us about the Golems chapter. Why don't we look at Sam first, and then the flowchart page after that?
Yeah, so there's a flowchart page we might not be able to get up for technical reasons. We'll see. Actually, you know a little bit more about Sam. You want to talk about Sam, and then I'll talk about the chapters?
Yeah, sure. Sam Yee is a hacker, a black hat hacker. This image takes place in the Seattle Public Library, which is the most amazing building in the city. It's by Rem Koolhaas. There's a great story that takes place in the book, in the chapter, about them hacking the Amazon headquarters with planes and seaplanes and robots and stuff like that.
Seattle story.
It's a very Seattle story, and so Sam is an unquestionably good guy, even though he's a black hat hacker. He's one of our few characters that doesn't really have the dark moral ambivalence side to him. He's totally on the right side. It's just he's usually against the authorities in every way. Flowchart looks like it's a JPEG. Can you show that, Shane?
Yeah, so while Shane's getting that up, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Golems chapter. I talked earlier about how some chapters, or some of the characters you're running into, some of these factions are a little more friendly or a little more antagonistic, or some of them are a little different. The Golems chapter is about an ancient creature called Aleph, who was one of the first golems ever made. And as the story goes, as the Apocrypha goes, Aleph was sort of lying in the ground when the golem next to him, Adam, got the breath of life, and Aleph didn't. And ever since then, Aleph has been wondering what he needs to do to become a real person, to gain a soul, to become a real boy, whatever version of this myth you want to keep in mind. And so the idea behind the golems is it represents everything that humans have done since as far back as we can remember to sort of embody and anthropomorphize objects, items, mechanisms, etc. In game terms, the golems aren't your enemy and they aren't your friend. They have a specific goal they're trying to do. They're all basically carrying out an experiment, in fact, 3 different large experiments, to see how they can make themselves alive. Well, because they're not your friends nor your enemies, they don't have the same priorities you do. So one of the examples I use is, hey, we all know about self-driving cars, and that's a way to get artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence seems like it might be making machines real, so that seems like a fruitful area of experimentation. Well, the fastest way to develop a self-driving car is just to run a bunch of tests. So let's just get ourselves, 10 or 15,000 of these self-driving cars and find ourselves a good test city like New York or San Francisco or Seattle and let them loose. And yeah, I mean, probably 4,000 or 5,000 cars and or people will die, but yeah, you got to break a few eggs to run an experiment. That's not really a problem.
And, you know, if you can get them to build themselves,
yeah, exactly.
That's even better, right? So
and
we have three.
End, sure, some people will have died, but we'll have self-driving cars. So won't we all be happier over that?
It'll all work out.
Yeah.
So three factions, right? So
yeah. So there's the zones, the drones, and the clones. These are, we can't stop making sort of puns and sort of names. And these are different approaches to how to make, sort of real life embody an object. You have things that are copies of people's in some way. Those are your clones. You have your drones, and those probably should be sort of self-evident. Those are things that don't look like people necessarily, but they kind of, they're trying to be intelligent in their own way. Yep. And the zones are way more digital. They don't really care about the human body as a way to become real at all. They're just trying to become alive however they can.
So the first
chapter is these three groups are each run an experiment. Aleph is sort of in charge of all of them, and he's just going to go whichever one gets the best result because doesn't have I guess he has either 3 horses in this race or no horse in the race. He doesn't particularly care which one wins. He just wants one to succeed. And over the course of the chapter, you can work with them, you can work against them, you can try to stop them from doing bad things, or you can try to sort of see if you can find a way to mitigate their experiments so that they involve less casualties, less loss of life, less collateral damage.
That's usually your goal in this chapter. I mean, did you talk about who Aleph was?
No, a little bit.
Okay. So Aleph is the golem from the Prague, Chelm Prague story. But the other thing about him that I thought was really cool that we sort of managed to make work is that he's actually Apple. Right, he's so if you can, Shane, if you can go down to the Aleph art, the Alephone art. I don't know if we can get to that real quick. You can see there's a phone there that looks something like you might have in your pocket. We were just like, well, what if instead of Bill Gates coming up with the thing, it was a super intelligent golem who was just like, okay, I'm going to be in charge of all the technology in the world as I sort of figure out how to be a real boy, Pinocchio style.
Yeah, so when we got the story Bible, the original sort of concept from Matt Forback, an excellent author, he had sort of sketched out Aleph as sort of the creature behind this faction. And when I saw this, hey, this sort of golem embodying technology and anthropomorphization, I said, all right, well, there's a math pun here. Those of you who are the weirder parts of math will know that there are different levels of infinity, and they have numbers assigned to them. They're the Aleph numbers, Aleph naught, Aleph 1, etc. But also Aleph 1 is just an excellent pun on Alephone.
Alephone. So there's no Apple. There's no Apple in our world. There's just Aleph. And so the X1 companion app that I showed you earlier is on your phone, which was made by a super intelligent golem named Aleph, and that's super fun. And he just wants to be a real boy, just like Pinocchio.
I'm going to talk about these cards a little bit.
Yeah,
and seems like we want to move forward. So the logic probe is a reference to one of my favorite obscure lines from the movie Tron.
You have additional favorite obscure lines from the movie Tron.
Sure. The T-totem was so this is an effort to talk about how technology has changed over time.
Let me jump back to a logic probe for a second, just a bit. All right. So if you can see this, the probe here has all sorts of words on it and numbers and levels and stuff like that. We should probably mention that there's a massive puzzle series in the thing, and anything like this is probably relevant. Just keep that in mind.
Sure.
So this is all the. Well, I'm not going to tell you what it's about. I'm just going to say probably relevant. Anyway, we'll just move on.
Definitely worth looking at. Yep.
There's a number of hints that we've given about the puzzle that our count is now 1.
Yeah.
I said it was going to be 0, didn't I? Well,
you did.
I almost mentioned something in one of the Nexus cards in Candlepoint, but I'm like, well, we can just leave that for later. But yeah. So T-Totem was an example of, let's talk about ancient tech as well as modern tech. And also, Mike, you want to talk about T-Totem?
well, Judaism in general is all over this chapter. We didn't shy away from anything in this game. We sort of made a commitment that we were going to be, we were not going to worry about, whether the boundaries were okay for us to put something in the game, because we put literally everything in the game. We wanted to be about the real world. And so this is the Dreidel from Hanukkah games. But the important thing about a teetotum is that it's used to actually decide stuff. And so Jewish kids learn about essentially gambling at an early age, but also about like how consequences work. And so we wanted to put that in the game as a thing. And Alex Thomas just nailed this piece. The flavor text, "A Great Miracle Happened There," is straight out of Jewish theology and stuff like that. So keep going.
Yeah. So like I said, we're going to speed up a little bit here because the clock is moving. Car crash set to music is both a reference to that sort of experiment I was talking about before. It's a threat, but it's also a reference to Ringworld, for those of you who like your deep references. One of the things you might have noticed here is when Mike was going through this chapter, we spent a while. Our reference notes are on most chapters are pretty extreme, but there's a lot of detail here. And then we already talked about the allophone. I'm going to mention the flowchart just a little bit. One of the things I said earlier was that you can play the missions in any order that you like. Well, then when you get to the Golems chapter, you'll find that there's a special mechanic for it. In order to get that mechanical, rigorous, algorithmic feel of the Golems chapter, you can't just play the missions in any order. You have to follow a set of instructions. And the easiest way for me to express this to our editor was, here, let me draw it out for you. And it's, I described it, and she's like, I can't follow this text, it's too deep. And I'm like, oh, give me the flowchart. And we ended up just putting the flowchart directly into the storybook.
Yep. Cool. All right, let's move on to the Physicians chapter, the last chapter in the flesh. Hey, you know what would be fun? Would be to a chapter about a group that wants to release a giant pandemic on the world to see how humanity evolves in a very short period of time. You know, maybe cause like the economy and business. Yeah. Just to see, like, can we push humanity forward by extreme stimulation through the application of disease?
It is worth noting that I spoke with the primary designer for this chapter, Keith Richmond, just this morning. He was asking if he could help out, and I said, hey, you could talk about physicians if you want. And he's like, I have 2 meetings from my work-home job, and then I have 2 kids that I'm looking after at the same time, because we're about to regress from our lockdown stage to lockdown stage -1. So no, I don't really want to talk about physicians right now. Thank you very much. See, I entirely respect that.
I get it. For me, I've always approached horror writing from the position of like, I'm Stanley Kubrick looking at it from a 10,000-foot view. I can't worry about the little people or the little country that's destroyed by the pandemic. I can't worry about stuff
that's
like
fair.
that.
You probably have fewer little people literally running into your knees while that happens.
Sure, that's true.
Also,
that's true. I am definitely the person who gets told on this project, no, Mike, that's too dark. And there's a lot of stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor because they were like, no, you can't. You just can't. But in this chapter, generally, all of the bad guys show up. There's nothing positive about this. All the bad guys show up.
Hang on. I gotta speak up for my physicians here. They're not bad guys.
Sure.
They're trying to make the world a better place.
Sure
So
they are.
better may not have the same definition you have.
Right. They run a little experiment in Cocoa Palm, Florida, and if it works, they go to the next town over, which happens to be Miami, and run the experiment there too.
One of the things we know about people is that pretty much no matter what you do, they'll make more. So they're great test subjects.
They do have some opinions. The center of this is a place called Druid Hills, Georgia, which is, I cannot make this up, where the Centers of Disease Control is located. Centers for Disease Control is located. I can't believe that our great scientific headquarters for dealing with infectious diseases is in a place called Druid Hills. Like, it's just gonna be, and I just love that. So I was like, let's make that the epicenter of this place. So this is Savannah Proctor. She's an experiment that went wrong. She was and has decided to take her opinions out on the people who experimented on her. She is definitely the most tragic character in the game, but she is amazingly fun to play because she causes all sorts of mutations to occur. So some of the cards here, just gonna whip through them because they're we were doing a playing thing, but we want to have fun. So here's the giant tardigrade, which is so huge it's almost as big as the tip of a pencil.
I think it's bigger than a tip of pencil based on that art.
Yeah,
But
I mean, but as tardigrades go, this is a very big tardigrade.
that's gigantic, terrifying.
Yeah, exactly.
Star Trek got excited about the concept of giant tardigrades as well, so
Sure.
I guess they made colossal or gargantuan tardigrades. So.
The next one is Personal Digital Assistant, which is another in our hand series. This is the left hand of darkness. The right hand is we saw in the Deathless chapter. Brainjack is this phrase, "Would you take the wire?" Is a phrase that we used to ask around the offices years ago, of just like, would you implant a wire in your head to get the internet directly to your brain? That used to be like a question, and now it's just a fact. Like, everybody would take the wire now.
I would take the wire.
And Vector. Okay, so this thing is about symptoms. Symptoms are a mechanic to add chaos to the game. Chad, can you give me a quick rundown on symptoms?
So, I mean, there's maladies coming up ahead, too, if you want to.
Great. So, why don't we'll tackle those together.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, Vector is sort of our main piece. Vector is, this disease is called the spindles. The spindles is kind of like the measles if they turned you into Wolverine, right? Because they give you these spikes that come out of your body parts.
Yeah, they turn you more into Spike from the Marvel Universe, but
yeah, absolutely. But it isn't good. You don't want it.
No.
But and it sort of overrides your brain and makes you into kind of a killing machine and stuff like that. But what it does is it the sad version of this is it takes any cancerous cells that exist in your body and protrudes them through your skin into weapons, which is kind of awful. But we do that all over the chapter with different kinds of diseases called zumps and necrosis, and I can't remember what the other ones are. And they produce symptoms, which are cards that are little things that alter your gameplay, and they kind of have semi-positive effects, but downsides too. Yes. And so this is the one I couldn't remember was the Better Tomorrow virus. So this is the theory behind the Better Tomorrow virus is that it is currently trying to mutate you into something else, right? And so this person is being mutated into, I guess, an angel or whatever, right? I mean,
probably a werewolf.
It could be a werewolf. The Better Tomorrow comes from something. What the heck is that from? I can't remember. But yeah. So the wings are trying to come out of his back. It's a John Woo movie, right? It's the John Woo movie. The ABT virus is the John Woo movie called A Better Tomorrow. Anyway, it turns out bad. And it says it helps, it hurts you, it makes more mutations happen, and then if you end the scenario with a lot of symptoms, well, you just die. Your character just goes away. And
you turn into a new saint.
Turn into something else, yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, not death, right? You become something else entirely, right? So
theoretically, that saint keeps their deaths and their fragments and memories. You just turn into a different person.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
as you go through, so like the vector might cause you to generate symptoms. Symptoms will build up over the course of a mission, but during a mission, eventually you're going to run into a malady, and it's going to care about the number of symptoms that you have. So downgrading your mutation dice means that things get less crazy, and generally it's better for you in this case.
No, downgrading's bad. Downgrading is bad for mutation dice.
Sure. Okay, right.
Yeah. But yes, mutations will swing, and you'll be like, what's going on? But now you're just like, oh wait, I really got to stop this train, because otherwise I'm going to be literally a different person. All right, that's that box. Thank you for coming to the flesh. Now we're going to go to the devil. So the names of the boxes are the world, the flesh, and the devil. And that phrase sort of, I notice when I say that in that order, there's sort of a ping pong ball that goes back and forth in people's brains. Like, I've heard that before. What is it? There's a couple ways you might have encountered the phrase "the world, the flesh, and the devil." One is through a movie from the 50s called "The World, the Flesh, and the Devil." But the important thing is that it's from a Christian eschatology that says these are the three temptations of man, right? And so, in the world, we deal with sort of the overall things that are happening in the world of the flesh. We deal with the temptations of humanity and so forth. The devil is all of our big picture stuff, all the things that are just like these are the threats that can destroy the world. And so Animus is the first one. Kids Johnson is the author on this one, and she's a Hugo and Nebula award-winning author, and she helped me make this chapter all about what if nature just got super mad, right? If Mother Nature came to life, or Mother Nature is in this game, Mother Nature is a 12-foot tall pregnant green woman, and she is solidly angry at you. And, that doesn't sound like that's an argument you're going to win. And so
I think she's got a perfectly valid argument.
Yeah, no. And so, well, Skylar, you can describe there's, the card, the divider in this game has the appease and oppose, and you had some. Yeah. Right. Go ahead and do that.
We were graphically able to depict your choices in Animus of whether or not you wanted to oppose Gaia or whether or not you wanted to appease Gaia, and so pretty much every card in the game, when you look in its text box, it has something that you have to do, or you have to do everything in the text box. In this chapter specifically, we wanted a way to visually allow you to shift between those two things, because you're going to do either or instead of everything, basically. Right. And I think that's one of the things that's really cool about Animus is the way that you make that choice through this chapter.
And it'll affect you later on. So
yeah,
if you peek at Crew Mask, which I think should be on screen now, it is a gift that will help you, and you can see it's got a power that says if you're opposing, you may do a different thing.
Yeah.
Right. So as you go through the chapter, you have the choice to Gaia's got this plan. Spoilers, it involves a levy that you've heard of.
Well, I mean, so we're just like we again, this is more like, do we lean into this, or do we sort of, take the coward's way out? And so we leaned into it. This is based on the destruction of New Orleans through a hurricane. And everybody who's heard us say that, we're like, that just happened. Like that's like only 10 years ago.
Still recent, yeah.
Yeah, we're just like, yeah, and that's why we're doing it, because we want you to remember that it was a huge problem. Right? If we could say, right, okay, we're going to take a comet and we're going to strike Russia, and you'll go, yeah, I heard something about that happening in 1906. Like, that's not going to mean anything to you. This is a thing that if she succeeds, millions of people will die, and that's bad.
I think that we haven't mentioned this in this little talk at all, and if anybody that's watching this doesn't know a lot about Apocrypha, it's when you take all the words and you take the images and put them together, Well, if you take all the images, you don't really feel like you're looking at a horror game, and then you take the words in the context and those pictures, and a picture of a levee, a picture of a dam, begins to be uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the things that's really amazing about this game is you take things that seem mundane and make them feel uncomfortable.
Right. The levee is a great example too, right? Levee is a card that you just look at and you can see the menace that's behind it. If that thing breaks, everything comes down, right?
Yeah. And then the flavor text on levee: man builds a wall, nature goes over, under, through.
That's right. This was written, not surprisingly, this was written during the campaign of Donald Trump for the presidency, right? And so we just, I was like, oh, there's a lot of talk about building a wall. Let me see if I can do something about that. And so, the storytelling here is all about like one of the, of what does it mean to try to protect yourself against a threat, right? And the answer is, well, maybe that threat's better, right? So what are some of the cards in this chapter? I haven't looked ahead.
So we've got Absinthe. Absinthe is an example of a thing that happens in the game. It's a gift, but you see at the bottom it has both Animus and Fey. This is a card that works in more than one chapter.
But it's different in each chapter.
Imagine something set in and around New Orleans might involve Absinthe. Got a little power here that talks about switching table positions. This gets us into a little bit of the flavor of the Fey, as well as the Animus at the same time.
Can I read I want to read the OneNote paragraph on Absence, just so you guys understand how layered this game is and what we did. So we wrote this in a OneNote because we knew we could never remember everything in this game. Like, it was impossible to so this is the entire text on Absinthe. The drink is called Green Fairy. The brand Lanfrey is named for Jean Lanfrey, a laborer in Switzerland who murdered his family while under the influence of absinthe, leading to a ban on the beverage in Europe. The flavor text is French for "it's the green hour somewhere," the green hour being 5 o'clock, the traditional time for drinking absinthe. This is a pun on the traditional barfly comment, "it's 5 o'clock somewhere." Like, I forgot literally all of that.
That's four layers deep.
Right. I did not remember any of it, right? But yeah, this is the Green Fairy, right? And it's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's and so yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So and I just love this piece by Jaticha Lewis, because the concept of absinthe being called the Green Fairy doesn't usually involve an actual fairy in the bottle, but in this world, that's totally plausible.
Yeah.
And and she'd like to get out, I guess. I don't know.
Well, she's going to get out eventually.
Yeah, she's going to get out. Everything gets out in this game. Crew Mask is based on the crew, which is what people who party in New Orleans are called. I do like the flavor text on this one. There is no finer disguise for a mystical society than a pretend mystical society. But yeah, let's see, another great Daria piece there.
Just into the idea a little bit that behind the designer, that there's a party going on in New Orleans, and also there's a hurricane coming.
Right.
And the Saints, they can't stop the hurricane. The hurricane's coming. The question is, can you work with the factions involved to prevent just killing everyone involved, or can Gaia accomplish her goals without necessarily destroying New Orleans? And that's where the meat of the mission comes in. That's where you get into the appeasing or opposing faction, because you can side with either one, and it works either way. It's sort of, which story do you want to tell?
Something familiar is the concept of when animals in this chapter are all working for the Mother Nature, Gaia. And so every single one that you encounter is working for her. And so this particular card, Something Familiar, is the joke is from the song from A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, but something familiar, so that now. But the idea of also a familiar is an animal that a wizard might have, right? So here it's not clear who the smartest person in this, or the smartest creature in this is, right?
But it's not a puppy.
It's not the puppy.
Right.
It's
Puppy
really
does, but yes.
Peppy thinks he's gonna get that. He's gonna get that laser pointer. Okay, face spiders. Okay, so I gotta talk about this.
Yeah.
There's this wonderful woman. Her name is Jessica Price. We love her. She posted online. This is one of those rare moments that isn't about like something that's in literature or politics or anything like that. She literally just posted a tweet that said, "I went to Lush to get tea oil for my face spiders." And I was like, you should not have tweeted that. And I said, I had this card made. Mira Petrov did a great job. And I sent it to her, and she said, I need to go to Lush right now. Because we all have face spiders. That's the thing we all have.
I live with a wonderful woman who at the time worked with Jessica, and she will not be in the room with this card if she is aware.
The flavor
She's not
text
the person who feels that way.
The flavor text is just, you should moisturize. I can't believe you pulled this card. We haven't mentioned Gabby Weidling for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Gabby, it's weird that this card is the transition to that. But Gabby is a developer who worked on this game and Pathfinder and such with us. A fantastic person. She is obsessed with the hydrology of the mangrove. That's a subject that is near and dear to her heart. I do not know why this specific plant is so much of a central focus in her life, but she does care about the mangroves and the loss of biodiversity quite a lot. And so we created the Grovers, who, by the way, we obviously know that the Sesame Street reference is there, but we created the Grovers to be like, oh, look, and what happens if all the mangroves come to life and start stalking the people in pools and stuff like that. Pretty much. And this just delighted Gabby so much. There's another card called...
This card is basically the fulcrum around which the entire chapter was designed.
Yeah, exactly. And all the things kind of get animated through plants in this one, like plant life. So we actually bring back the dinosaurs in this chapter by taking vines and animating their bones and stuff like that. It's not like the Deathless where they're undead. They're still just bones, but the plants are moving them around, right? And so, anyway, just a happy little thing from New Orleans. Hey, yeah, that's right. It's the mangroves. That's the mangroves. All right, let's go to Vegas.
A happy little thing from the other two-word city.
Let's go to Vegas.
Woohoo!
Woo! We're going to Vegas.
So I'm going to talk a tiny bit about inner tubes while Mike is catching up here.
Yeah.
Mike will talk about the story of inner tubes,
Sure.
but I just want to talk about the mechanics here, just getting a little variety here. Inner tubes is a circus attraction. He's a clown. He is a juggler. Mike will probably talk more about that in a minute.
Sure.
But we're like, okay, what can we do to represent a juggler here? So you can see he's got two character powers. When he starts, exchange one card in your hand with one card in your discard pile, or in the hand of someone else where you are. And then initiate when you start doing the thing. Shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 3 cards. Now these powers are all optional, so basically Inner Tubes the Clown is constantly juggling. He can juggle his cards, he can juggle your cards, he can juggle his whole hand.
That's right.
All right, can you see the card?
Inner Tubes is an actual person. His name is Rick Rubenstein, he is a juggler, and once noted that his name anagrammed, his last name Rubenstein anagrammed to Inner Tubes, and I was like, that's your name now. And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, okay, so I gotta tell you, Rick, you know how jugglers and clowns, they have to try to have like a name that's not somebody else's. They're not any more Bozos the Clowns. There's only one Bozo the Clown. It's like, yeah, there's a database of those. You can go and look up whether your name is still available. And I'm going to bet you right now that Inner Tubes the Clown has not been taken. And he said, all right, you're on. And so we went and looked at the database, and Inner Tubes had not been taken. So we squatted on the domain. We now own, this is Inner Tubes. And so that's where this comes from. And that's actually Rick. So, Okay, so The Damned. It's set in Las Vegas, which is a scary place, but it's a really exciting place. It's where all the angels and demons have gone. And so showgirls and gamblers and stuff like that are all here, and they're all angels and demons, every one of them. The first card here is Johnny Esquire, who's named after a friend of ours who passed away. He was a lawyer in Las Vegas named John Ceriso, very close friend of ours, and he won the first gay adoption cases in Nevada. He's just a saint of a human being, so we decided to put him in. My friend Bill Sherman and I decided to put him in. The flavor text here: he only went to law school because nobody opened up a hero school. Probably the most tear-jerking thing I've written in this game. But this is him, and his job is to deal with contracts. We should talk about what contracts are. Who wants to talk about contracts?
I can do that. So contracts are a special kind of card that will, instead of going into your deck and shuffling in that you draw into, you instead bind it to your soul and slot it into your halo instead of how you would normally interact with a contract or other cards in the game. They do eventually come out of your soul when you finish that game. And they don't stay in forever, but yeah.
Right. And sometimes you want them, and sometimes you don't want them. But usually, the right sequence is you want them when you get them, but you don't want them to stick around.
Like all contracts, they seem like a good idea at the time.
Right. Yeah. And so you're like, I'll be happy to take this benefit now, but I know there's going to be a consequence later, but later is the future, right? And then the future shows up, and you're like, why did past Mike agree to this terrible idea?
Well, if it is Gen Con, so we probably would talk about contract poison.
Yes.
And the wildness that is contract poison.
Oh yeah.
Didn't think to ask for that one. So we have many promo cards for this game.
Yeah. I mean, there's no text on the card because it's blank, right? So it
go
doesn't
ahead
really matter.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have a promo. It's basically a blank card, but every time you get a signature from anybody that works at the company, it adds a mechanic to that card and can become the most mechanic, like analysis paralysis card in the game, because you can get up like I think it's like 25 mechanics on one card that you have to look up in a spreadsheet to figure it out. But the reason I bring it up is because those kind of contracts seem like a really good idea until they get really terrible. Is Liz Spain's, which is you continue to draw an additional card. Your hand size increases by 1 every turn.
Right. It sounds good, really.
It sounds really good because you're like, oh man, more cards is so good. But around like 5 or 6 turns later, and you're drawing back up to 10 cards, you notice that you're gonna have your whole deck in your hand if you don't finish this game quickly.
Remember,
and that will kill you.
Blindness just seemed like such a major piece of Christian theology, and we just wanted it, and so it looks really cool. Like, I mean, but like this is a big thing to get a hold of, and the power on it is big. There's a mechanic in this. You can see that in this chapter where you add the what's the starburst in the soul thing again, Chad?
I'm not sure what that's meaning here in this chapter.
That's right. That's add the number of dice you have in that. I think
so. That's probably your virtue. Yeah.
Right.
It's your
because it's active player. That's right. Yeah.
That's right. It's active player.
Active player's virtue.
Sorry, there's a difference between when you do design and development and when you look at the laid out cards that sometimes kicks in. But yeah.
Well, it's harder for you if you've got skill in that, basically. So we've got all the angels and demons in here. The Beelzebufo is a demon frog, based on the Loveland monster, which is the Loveland frog was a giant. It was a cryptid that was like a frog that was the size of a VW microbus. Well, there's a species of frog called the Beelzebufo, which is the devil frog, which is that big, and it's prehistoric, doesn't exist anymore. So we said, all right. And this piece of art has like faces on the back of the frog because that's also really creepy.
Yeah.
But
these will give you an example of the other side of contracts, which is sometimes you have to enter contracts even if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yep. Zizix is a place. We should say we're going to keep going on this because we got a couple more chapters to go through. It's coming on noon, but we're just going to keep going and finish out. And you're welcome to stay with us as you like. Thanks for sticking around this long. So Zizix is a place. If you drive from Las Vegas to Los Angeles or vice versa, you will run into Zizix, which is the town with the alphabetically last name in the United States. And so along that way, you will encounter many tumbleweeds, so we decided to bring one to life. This is one of those things where it's a contract where you if you lose, you have to put this monster in your halo, which is where your cards are, and this stops you from doing multiple confrontations, multiple investigations a turn, which is how you get the game done.
Yeah, basically you get lost.
You get lost.
After your investigation, you have to go to transfer, which is either where you go somewhere else or you give something to someone else.
Yep. So
Also,
finally,
I have
in
the pun in the name and the flavor text, but we can move on after that.
yep. What? Oh, sorry. What about the flavor text?
Oh, it's just it always has the last word.
Oh yeah, because it's the last word in the dictionary.
EZY is going to be alphabetically last in pretty much every word list.
This is the last card in this group is Abramolin. So Abramolin is one of the Novum, just like all the big bads in this thing. He's the one who has your contracts. He has contracts on everybody in the world, and he lives in a casino called the Alexandria. You can see it's got kind of a Luxor-ish theme to it, and he's based on a 6th century, I think, 16th century wizard, a real life person who there's great stories about visiting him in the desert, and the guy Abraham of Worms says, "I wish to learn from you," and the Abramolin says, "You can learn, leave all your stuff behind and go into the desert," and when he comes back, Abramolin is gone and his stuff is gone. But wait, it's just a test and all. So it's all good. He also loves magic squares, which is where the concept of magic squares really comes from. The words where they read the same across and down, and kind of the predecessor of crossword puzzles. Mm-hmm. And so that, I don't know, maybe we did something with that. I don't know. I'm just gonna leave that one there. So he will unbundle his magic word squares and teach you if you're willing to sacrifice all of yourself. So I'm just going to leave that out there. So anyway, that's The Damned. It's set in Vegas. Oh, we also have another game in Vegas you might like. It's called Lords of Vegas, and tomorrow we're going to be doing streaming and panels about that.
Gameplay. Yeah.
Gameplay, yeah. But let's move to the Dreamers, the northeast portion of the country. Chad, what school did you go to?
I went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Well, guess who else is there? Guess who else is there? It's Professor Byron. This chapter is all about M theory. Chad, you want that one?
I understand M theory less than some people.
So
the idea here, I'll go briefly, is just that there is definitely a part of mathematics which is more or less indistinguishable from magic, and vice versa, and that the Dreamers is basically living in exactly that space.
This is where we get all of our Cthulhuid monsters, all of our dream nonsense, all of our time travel is a giant thing in this. There's tons of time travel in this chapter. extra dimensions, things like that. And all of this dimensional theory is built around this fellow named Nebuchadnezzar, who is in the Bible, the dreamer. And the story of Nebuchadnezzar is fascinating. It's probably the most interesting story in the Bible, other than, well, the big one in let's call it chapter 2. He's dreaming. He's asleep in the middle of the earth, and so like dead center in the middle of the earth. But if you apply enough mathematical reasoning in a place called the Infinite Corridor, which is, can you describe what the Infinite Corridor is, Chad?
You mean the actual Infinite Corridor?
Yeah, Infinite Corridor.
So at MIT, when they first built the campus, it was in a certain place on a block, and it's right in the middle of Cambridge. And then they sort of expanded out there. And in the campus, there is one long corridor which connects sort of the main entrance points of campus to the rest of campus. And so it is the second longest contiguous hallway in the world. And every year for at least one day and sometimes two, the stars and or sun align perfectly so that you can see the sun all the way down the Infinite Corridor.
MIT Henge is called. So we use math like crazy in this chapter. It's fascinating. So let's take a look at some of the cards. There's Mr. Whiffle. Mr. Whiffle is Nate Taylor here, who is our artist for Lords of Vegas. Merry Christmas from your pals at World Records. This is our charity card. It's a charity card. Where the promo version of this is, where it's a teddy bear from a story called The Princess and Mr. Whiffle, which is a story you could read your kids, but I don't. But that's up to you. Let's go. Pat Rothfuss and Nate Taylor made a story that you could read your kids. That's up to you. That's how I'm gonna frame it. Yeah, here we have a little teddy bear with with dynamite strapped to him. And that's just the kind of thing that happens to Mr. Whiffle. But definitely go to World Builder's site and type Mr. Whiffle, and you can order that and raise some money for charity. Kaleidoscope, because I cannot resist a good homophone, is a card where you can use this device to slam a card into the next card in the deck, which is super fun. It's a very fun card to use. Oh man, Liz just had, when she was doing Dreamers, every now and then she would just come up with something that was just like, and then this guy is made of bees, and you're just like, what? He's made of bees? He doesn't control bees. No, he doesn't control them. The bees are pretty much on their own. He's just like, he's all bees. And I'm like, okay, sure. So Crowley, whose name comes from the demonologist Alexander Crowley, which also is a character in a book by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett called Good Omens. There's a famous poem by William Hughes Mearns called Antagonish, which begins, "Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away." So we played with that terminology here. It's just a super creepy card. And so thank you, Aleister Crowley, for existing. Gatekeeper. All right. Gatekeeper. Where to start with this one? We have a book called The Maze of Games, and it's by me and Pete Venters with development by Gabby Weidling, and Tanis O'Connor's our editor, and Elisa Teague's our graphic designer, and it's the best thing we've ever done in a lot of ways. I mean, it's not the best thing we've ever, but it's
an incredible, unique object that is one of a kind, just kind of like this game in the world.
That's right. So it's a book where the pages are in the wrong order and you have to solve the puzzles to put the narrative back together. Okay, so all of that, in this book, a guy named the Gatekeeper is a skeletal guardian, it traps kids in a literary maze, and they have to fight their way through it and try to get their way out, and it's a big, complicated thing. Okay, so he comes from a book called The Maze of Games, and when you open the book, he'll pop out and put you in that maze. So the book is entirely in black and white because Pete and I wanted a real sort of old-timey textured feeling. It's weirdly, it's printed in color, but the illustrations are black and white. That's how seriously we took that, right? So for this game, we thought, all right, the Gatekeeper needs to make an appearance in here. But it's set in the modern day. He wouldn't be in black and white. And so this is the only color illustration of the Gatekeeper. And he shows up in a very special place, which we hope opens again soon, which is our Maze of Games escape room that's in Seattle. I think you'll love it if you can get to it. And but anyway, this is the Gatekeeper. He's probably the most iconic character I've ever created. And I really like him. So,
yep.
Yeah. And then finally we have Ole Lukaje. So speaking of Neil, we mentioned Neil Gaiman before. So he did a book series called Sandman, which you probably know, and that is based on this guy. He is a Swedish Sandman, and he's the guy who comes to you in your dreams and puts sand in your eyes. And he sort of controls the world of dreams and so forth. So there's one way to get to Neil Gaiman, and there are all sorts of references to that stuff because we just really like it. Okay, so let's leave the world of dreams and go into there's no specific order you have to do these chapters, but if this game has an epilogue, it's here. Chad, I think this is all you. So
Sure. So I will talk just a little bit. When I put together the art lists, I thought that we might have Liz available for the Dreamers chapter, where she did a lot of both design and art direction. So I leaned a little heavily into the art. So I'm glad Mike was able to remember the backstories for most of those, because I didn't know most of them. Serpents. Remember before I talked about how some of the chapters, the Novum, the factions involved are friendly, and some of them are less friendly, and some of them you can make friends. The Serpents are here to destroy the world. Full stop.
Yeah, that's it.
Their goal is to summon the dragon. As far as we know, there's only one left. He is asleep, but they're working on it. And their goal is basically to be the last people standing, even if they're only the last people standing by a few hours. Doesn't matter. We have our hero here, Israel, the paleoherpetologist, which is, one of the best job descriptions I can possibly imagine.
Some people need to be ancient serpent hunters. We should say the world had a lot of dragons at one point.
Way back when, yes.
Well, yeah, at one point, there were dragons all over the place. And dragons were very scary and stuff like that. But there was this thing called the paradigm that was put into place, which is basically we don't want mankind freaking out about monsters all the time, so let's make them forget them. Let's make them not worry about. And when monsters show up, because the monsters still exist, you'll rationalize them. When you see a guy who turns into a werewolf, you think, oh, and then he goes and kills a bunch of people. Oh, that guy had too much to drink. And then he went on a killing spree.
And you just, maybe it was some sort of drug or something.
You can figure out a way. Your brain can figure out a way to rationalize that. What it can't figure out a way to rationalize is a lizard the size of an ocean liner. And so you just can't deal with it. If it's a flying monster, so if a dragon did get out, well, that would clearly break the paradigm, and the end of the world would, by definition, follow.
Yeah,
and so go ahead.
That's sort of emphasized by our pyramid here. So you've seen some of our nexuses. You see there's a hope and doom side. This is just a garden variety pyramid with a very ominous shadow moving above it. Mm-hmm. And this is sort of to hint that the serpents. Let's see where we've got. I'm going to move ahead to. We'll come back to Cobalt Blood. If we look at the next set, you could see that there is a cult. There is a group of people who want to wake the dragon. They come from a variety of different cultural influences, and you can see several of them represented here. And their goal is to go and find out where the dragon is sleeping, find a way to wake the dragon, and go carry that out. No, we won't need to go back. It's fine. So as you get into this chapter, basically they're just opposed to you the whole time. You're going to have to go through, you're going to have to fight them. They're not going to negotiate. They're not going to make friends. They're not going to stop. So part of this, there's an extra set of mechanics called the ordeals. This leans into one of the things Skylar mentioned. I wasn't sure how we were going to get the layout, so we don't have the triptychs here. So this is part of one. The Ordeal of Fire is one of a set of cards. If you put them together, they tell a little panoramic story.
Yeah, Skylar was talking earlier about. Go ahead and talk about that again. Skylar.
Yeah. So if you have a copy of the game, or if you don't, then you should get a copy of the game, and then check out the Ordeals of Fire, Smoke, Stone, and
Blood.
And if you flip them all over, and align them in order, they create a close to perfect panoramic image in the full art cards on the back of the true threats.
If you were like 2 inches tall and stood in the middle of a square of these cards, it would be a totally panoramic view.
It would be, yeah. You'd be completely surrounded, except for I think one of those sides doesn't fully connect. So
sure,
it wouldn't be a spherical, but it would be
sure,
panoramic. Yeah.
Skylar did a great job with those. They just look great. So talking a little bit about, I'm going to lean back and talk about Cobalt Blood. We don't have to look at it again, but Cobalt Blood was a reference to the serpents, the various kinds of serpents, dragons, snakes, reptilians of various sorts, and also a reference to our good friend Wolfgang Bauer and his company Cobalt Press. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Mike.
Well, Wolfgang is one of the great RPG creators of the modern era, and he is a good friend of mine, and he also wrote all the text for Serpent. So I was like, okay, I'm not even going to tell Wolf about this. I'm going to make a card called Cobalt Blood, and in it, I'm going to have a little vial of it and a copy of his magazine, Cobalt Quarterly, which has got apparently a story called The Curse of the Phantom Fungus. Sure. And so, here you are. It's like this is the wrapping that this comes in. Somebody tore up a copy of the Cobalt. So anyway, you can see his name, Wolfgang Bauer, on there in the card. And and he did a great job. The Serpent Cultists are they're the people that Indiana Jones tries to run away from, but if he has to, mows down, right? Like these guys are kind of chumps in some ways, but they do got a lot of scary stuff going on. So anyway, they need some Cobalt Blood to do it. Yeah.
The Cadeo Negro is part of a pair. I couldn't get them both in.
Cadeo Blanco is the other one. Yeah, the two ghost dogs. There are dogs all over this game because we just love dogs. But Black Dog and White Dog, and they guard the gates of the Mayan gods. So this chapter takes place in Mexico. The bad guys actually are from India, which is kind of weird because all the dragon stuff happens in the Far East in India, in the mid-continent, and then moves over here when all the dragons are exterminated over there, but there's one still sleeping under a pyramid somewhere in the world, and the pyramid in question is in Mexico City, which is the largest city in the world and about the very worst place you would like to have a dragon show up. And so we have one of our former employees, a guy named Javier Quintero, is from Mexico City, game designer there now, and he and I sort of got together and just figured out what it would be like to reimagine the Temple of the Sun and stuff like that. So there's a really nice bit of history here, and these dogs, they're cute.
They're helping you. So as you go through the chapter, you'll have to undergo these ordeals, and the idea is that the Serpent Cult is also doing these same sorts of things, and they're basically in a race with you. one of the things about the game in general is that as you play, the game sort of reacts in various ways. So, for example, we talked about the Deathless early on, where things go into the well, occasionally things come out of the well. But fundamentally, the well is building up things that you'll need to deal with the final challenge. Well, the Serpents kind of takes that and turns it up a little bit more in that if you get to the end, you manage to ascend the pyramid and complete the ordeals, then you have a chance to stop the effective leader of this faction who is trying to wake the dragon. And if you fail, it's possible that she will wake the dragon, and that will make things very bad for the world and for you for basically the foreseeable future. Now, because it is a game, there is a way back from it, but it is quite difficult.
And it's not the end of the game, just to be clear. It just means that the world is ending. And so you have to deal with that fact in every other game of it that you play after that point. It's a very weird sequence when that goes off. That dragon is called Morningstar and is by far the hardest thing to deal with in this game.
Yep, I was going to say, the dragon has several names, but Morningstar is the...
Yeah, it's the Morningstar. It's Quetzalcoatl, the star of the morning in Mayan Aztec lore. Okay, so those are all the cards those are all the stuff in the Devil, but we decided that there was one more thing we wanted to do, and that was when we wanted to do something for somebody who had all those game units. So we made the Hybrid Chapter, which is a bonus chapter which contains, without doubt, our most bizarre ideas. They require you to have specific chapters, so you'll need all the sets to play. And so I'm just going to sort of go to one of them real quick. So we have various ones here, like Attack the Blockchain and Shifting Sands. But my personal favorite in this chapter, it is one that we expanded in great detail, is called Snake NATO, which is what happens when a series of snake-infested cyclones strike the American Southwest. And and it is so bizarre, this scenario, that we made a entire what would you call it? It's a LARP sort of.
Guided mode adventure.
It's kind of like a LARP. We made a large scale same room RPG experience of it. Yeah.
So there's like 20 tables of this running at the same time, and we brought like plastic snakes with us. Is that right? Did we throw them at people? I think we threw them at people. I think we threw rubber snakes at people.
So when you were talking about the design of these, so there are 9 chapters plus Candleplate, and there are 9 missions in each because numbers are important here. And that got us to 90 missions. But we're like, oh, if we did a mission for pairs, then we could have 99 missions. And that is also a good number. Yes. But what would we do with them? What might they be? And my strong belief from having talked to nearly everybody is that 7 or 8 people came up with the idea for Snake NATO at effectively the same time. Well, obviously, if we're going to combine these two, we have to do Snake NATO.
Yeah.
And then we just sat around the office. We're like, what will we do? We'd have the thing, and we'll have twisters and tornadoes, and then there'll be snakes coming at them. How will we do that? And someone was like, "We'll get some snakes and literally throw them at people." It didn't go. Yeah, it went from there to how you'd expect.
So that is actually available on our website for free, I believe, and I highly recommend you download it because it's super silly and fun. So yeah, this is a great. Go ahead.
The whole Hybrids chapter is super fun.
Yeah.
It was I think the only part of everything that I actually felt like I got to have a hand in, like, because when I joined, a lot of stuff was already done, but I think Hybrids was where I got to actually sit around the table and be like, oh, I've just laid out all of these things. Let's talk about how we can combine them together.
Yeah, when Skylar joined, we had so much stuff that we desperately needed him to do for layout and design and telling us if these ideas could possibly work, that it's just a while before we could actually get him enough free time to help with design.
Well, and also in this particular case, now we were good at it. So when we're doing things like Deathless and Skinwalkers, we're kind of making it up as we go along. I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is how lycanthropy works. And so we tested it, and it takes a little bit of the fun out of it after a while, because like, oh, this version of lycanthropy didn't work. Let me try a different version. We try. By the time we got done with all that, we're like, we need to make the hybrids chapter. Everything was done. Like all the hard work was done, and we could just come up with our most ridiculous ideas. So there's a Twilight clone here of vampires and werewolves in Chicago. There's
I thought you were talking about Twilight Struggle.
We did we have a question from chat. If you want to answer a question real quick.
Oh, I did not see. What's the question?
So it is. There's no prescribed order for which order we're supposed to play the various chapters. But is there one for the hybrid chapters, or where they would go?
No, play them in whatever order you like.
No, I mean, I found
you probably shouldn't start with a hybrid chapter.
That's what I would say. Is I would run a chapter. I would try to get through a chapter at least a little bit before introducing the elements, because it'll take. Like, it really feels like you have to know how to deal with some of that stuff in the hybrid chapter.
You have to know the two mechanics, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you did Golems and then you did Damned, you could then play the hybrid chapter, the hybrid mission after that.
But I don't think you need to play them all the way through.
No, I don't think so, no.
I just think you should not. Hybrid should not be your first exposure to either of the two chapters.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
You're going to be like the idea of these missions is that we're blending the flavor of two things. It's also blending the mechanics a little bit, but it's because there's so much stuff there, it will be probably more confusing to start that way. That makes sense, yeah.
I will say we've now seen something that I did not perceive as possible, which is multiple people have posted their entire game logs for this game. They have done all 99 missions. And every single person who has done that has done the hybrid chapter last.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I expect people to do the hybrid chapter last, but there's no reason you have to.
No, I think don't leave something like Snake NATO for the end. It's just too fun. It's just too fun, right? I mean, like, or Twilight Struggle, which is another one, which is like, oh man, that's like the best pun in the game. So that's the end of the chapters. I see there's two more sections here. One is on fragments. Let me just really quickly explain what those are. We won't spend a lot of time on them. Fragments are the memories that you get. So you don't know your entire history. The object of the game is you start out just being a vaguely normal human being. So Dr. Zeez is an unlicensed necrosurgeon. He does some things. He's good at those things, and that's it. So he's basically like this. He knows what he can do. And the more fragments you get is the more memories you get. And the memories add instability to the game. Some of them go away quickly. If you use them, the card goes away forever. Some of them stick around for a while, and they cause all sorts of weird things. You'd be like, oh, look, I can heal people. Yes, but you do that by stealing cards from my deck. Please stop doing that, right? And so forth. So we'll just show you just a couple of fragments out of the way. Here's the cat door. So there's little stories by various authors, this is where people like Pat Rothfuss and other folks go. They've just come up with these middle portions of these. You don't know the history of the person beforehand. You don't know the history of the person afterwards, but you know that this memory, and then each of them gives them a special superpower. So if we could go to the teddy bear, which is the fifth one in the fragment list.
So just on the second group of fragments.
Yeah.
So while we're getting that, I was just saying, so there's a couple kinds of fragments. I was looking at something, I might have missed that. Yeah. So there are fleeting fragments that are all sacrificed to use, and they're these the white on black. These are sort of fleeting memories, and then each chapter comes with specific fragments that are tied to the story. So an individual author would write the fragments for that whole chapter, and then maybe also submit some fleeting fragments, for which we also we requested a bunch of submissions on, I think it was Twitter at the time, and just collected from friends and artists and developers and people nearby and whatnot.
So and the great part is that they're some of the best writing that's been in any of our games, and there are things that people could do that we really enjoyed having. So Jerry Holkins,
we got Teddy Bear up now, also, just so you know. Teddy
Bear. So this is by Patrick Rothfuss, so this is kind of a tragic little card. But what it does is that if you put it in your Halo, you can sacrifice the card to allow every player to give you a card, right? And so that could be very handy, and it's kind of the thing a teddy bear would do, right? It's I get to keep you, I get to hold you close, right? And so every one of these, but they allow, like, oh wow, I've got wings now. Oh wow, I breathe fire now. Oh wow, I can conduct electricity now. Like all those things, all those powers that you get over time, because you start as a human being, but you kind of end as a superhero. You were the superhero all along. It's just your memory was so bad, it was all occluded, that you had to do this. And a lot of this came from my research on Alzheimer's disease and things like that. I wrote a big thing about Alzheimer's disease in Apocrypha a while back that you could look at online. But yeah, that's what these memories are, and they're super good. Okay, so then there's the end. What's in this? Oh, there's a happy little death.
Yeah. So one of the things about being these crazy characters in the game is that bad stuff can happen to you. Your health can run out and whatnot. And there's a little more refinement than in the Pathfinder Adventure card game, where when your deck runs out, you just die immediately. There's a chance in this game to save people who have faded, who have run out of health, because this game is more about that sort of thematic element. But it's also likely that your character might die, and because you are these, somewhat semi-religious, mythological superheroes, that is not necessarily the end of your story, but it does occupy a part of your mind from then on. So we have these death cards to represent that.
Yeah, so all these death cards have text of a memory that somebody has when they die, and it sticks around. Some of them are actual, like you can figure out what real human being had that memory when they had a near-death experience. Right, so there's some, and it's really kind of an interesting puzzle on its own to just figure out who we were writing about each time. But yeah, so that's about it. The game is available on our website. It is called Apocrypha. The Apocrypha Adventure card game. The main sets are the World, the Flesh, and the Devil. There's the hybrid bonus scenario pack. Mission pack. There's some dice that you can get, although we're probably very close to being out of those. I don't know if we're out of all the rest of the accessories. Oh, you can get the playmat from Inked Gaming, which we have a link to on our site, and so on. So if you've enjoyed this, we'd love you to pick up a copy. Since this is Gen Con right now, we have a 50% off sale of everything in our store. So if you go to loansharkgames.com/shop, or just go to the shop page of the loansharkgames.com store, or a page, you can get all these things, have them sent to you. They're super good. As I said, 666 pieces of art, the fine design work of Chad and his team, the fine graphics work of Skylar and his team, some of the most...
I think it's important that the people that stuck around for all 2.5 hours are probably our most diehard fans, and a huge thank you to them is super important.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes,
I assume that there are people that are checking it out, but I also assume that a lot of these people are the people that have stuck through all of it, have been through everything and done everything, and super huge thank you to them, because our community is fantastic for this game.
Yeah, I gotta say, we get so much good fan mail, and we really like it. So please keep telling us that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
we like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna call this, but I want to just do shout out for just a couple of other events that are on the Loan Shark schedule. First, we encourage you to go to our booth. That's a metaphorical booth.
The Looking Glass.
The Looking Glass. And so check out that. Again, you can get to our store, which has a 50% off sale. You can participate in the Gen Con Gamer Grocery Bag Challenge, which is a little puzzle series that is super fun and leads you to get a free puzzle pack from us if you complete that. It's not too hard. It's not going to take you very long. And we're tweeting that out and Facebooking that out all throughout the convention. And then tomorrow is our Lords of Vegas Day. We have a live stream with James Ernest and Molly Lewis planned, plus we'll be there too. And we have a panel before that called the World of Lords of Vegas. All right, and just all sorts of fun stuff, Lords of Vegas themed tomorrow, and we would love to see you there because it's gonna be fun.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Skylar.
No problem. Thank you, everybody that hung out. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Shane, and everybody. Do your best. Enjoy your Gen Con online. We'll see you later. I'll see you guys at Steak and Shake.